Hey, and welcome back to AR's Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am A.R. Minabala, and today I am joined by the Rose Gallery, folks. This is it. This is the fantasy authors you need to look out for, and not even just fantasy authors. These are the authors you need to look out for, period. These are the ones, indie authors, I'm telling you. Top left, Adam. Well, starting from top left and going counterclockwise, we have Adam Gaffen, Seymour Zeynalli, Sam Addo, and of course P.L. Stuart. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Great.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Good to be here. Good to finally get in on one of these chats.
Yeah, I'm glad that we can finally do one of these on the weekdays and get some people, some new faces we haven't. Although Adam Gaffen, the true heavyweight, 3 out of 3 for the group cast so far. It is awesome. And just do a little intro. Adam Gaffen, where can people find you?
Okay, you can find me at www.cassidychronicles.com. That's the website. You can go there to find everything about the novels. There are posts up there from the characters, along with guest posts from other authors and author interviews. You can also go and there's a fan page on Facebook, believe it or not, fans of Adam Gaffen. So you can go in there and chat with other fans.
Hey,
Nice.
always a good to connect with the peoples. Seymour, where can
Yeah.
people find you?
They can find me on Reddit under the maker of stories. That's pretty much it. I'm not really big on social media.
And of course, there's an Amazon page, right? Seymour
Oh, yeah.
Zeynalli, Get on Blood and Steel, right?
Yeah, as long as they buy a copy. I don't care.
Dirty bastards hacking into Amazon and stealing those copies. We need to find them and beat them all.
I guess I'm worthy enough of stealing something. I don't know.
It's unreal. I'm telling you. And then Sam, where can people find you?
Y'all can find me on www.animateworks.com. You can also find me on Twitter at animateworks and also on Instagram at @animaddo. And yeah, that's those are the places you can find me.
PL Stewart.
You can find me on Twitter most of the time at PL Stuart Writes, same as my Facebook handle at PL Stuart Writes. Typically, those two platforms. My website's www.plstuart.com. I have a blog. I also do a lot of reviews of sci-fi and fantasy authors on Goodreads, and I usually transpose those reviews on my blog. So, yep, that's where to find me.
All right. So now that we have the formalities out the way, right? One thing that I wanted to kind of talk to everybody about in this format is since we're all fantasy authors, how do you guys feel? Well, sci-fi / fantasy authors, right? How do
Speculative
you guys
fiction.
feel? Yeah. How do you guys feel about like genres being categorized? I was having just especially in the beta reader phase that I'm in right now. I have a lot of people that will come back to me and because I'll find them on Instagram. I'll like look at the posts that they have, and if they have books that are similar to something that I would say my book is in the around the same page of, I send them a little, hey, you know what? I want to be an ARC reader, right? And most of the time it's been like great response, but 1 or 2 people have responded like, oh, I don't really read sci-fi. And then I look at their posts, it's like, oh, wait a minute, but you're reading Harry Potter, you're reading all these things and all these things. And I actually like even called out a person because I said the exact same thing. I was like, all right, but Harry Potter, if you think about it, is a sci-fi fantasy. If you just kind of have a headcanon that instead of magic being like this fantastical thing, it's a science fiction of the wand being a technology, and then like like the spells that you're using are just like a source code in order to get the programming that you want out of the wand. I mean, just like everything is like the headcanon that you want. Really, to me, like I've never listened to or even followed genres in my entire life. I always just listen to like writing. Know what I mean? Like same thing, just Rick Riordan, right? Not a sci-fi writer, but more of like the historical fiction with like the whole Greek and Roman things. Love that shit. Breaking Bad. If somebody were to tell me, hey, you should watch this urban fiction about a guy that's going through cancer, I'd be like, yeah, go fuck yourself. I'm not gonna watch that. But it's Breaking Bad. Like, what are you talking about? It's one of the best TV shows ever made. So like genres, in a sense, really help, right? And that like it attracts people. I think in the same way it can kind of the tier. Because then there's certain people that go like, oh, I don't read sci-fi because I'm not like into like high technology. But it's like, all right, but you're into magic. Isn't that the same shit? I'm just describing mine in a different way.
Well, to that, Arthur Clarke years ago, years and years ago, said that if a technology is advanced enough, it's indistinguishable from magic. So I mean, that goes kind of to the point. But I mean, genres are a two-edged sword. For, on the one hand, it gives you an audience. If you say my book is high fantasy, then there are millions of people out there for whom that is their jam. They want high fantasy, and so they're going to look at your book before they look at somebody else's. Same with sci-fi, same with romance, same with mystery, same with historical fiction. It gives you a market. The other side of that is what you were saying, that there are going to be people who say, oh, it's sci-fi, I don't read that. It's high fantasy, I don't read that. It's romance, I don't read that. So I don't think there's any way we're ever going to get away from it. I think, there's always this instinct to pigeonhole things, to categorize things. It's just the way the human brain works. We want to put things in order. We want to know where things go. So, as far as that goes, take advantage of it. Look at the glass is half full instead of half empty.
Well, I guess the point that I was like the thing that kind of had me thinking about it to begin with was more kind of that I never wrote my book in an idea of a genre. I got the idea and then started writing it, and then I had to pick the genre afterwards. So it's just kind of weird that now I have to now define that. I have to now, sci-fi is without a doubt, but sci-fi isn't just the only thing you have to, you have to be a sci-fi fantasy, XYZ. It has dystopian elements, has that, all these like different things. And I don't know what route to like put my horse in. Because like if I put it in this thing, are people going to be deterred because it's a YA? If I add that in there, which technically it could be. I mean, PL, speak to me. You read the book cover to cover. It could technically be YA if I were to put that spin on it. But I don't want to put that.
Your book was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, my brother. And I think I agree with Adam. Unfortunately, the way, and back to the conspiracy theories I've spoken about with A.R.T at length, this is all about Amazon. And this is all about Amazon marketing, the categories that they choose to allocate to different books that they expect authors to accept in order to market certain books to certain readers, because it all fits into the algorithms neatly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And while, as Adam said, that can be very conducive to sales and marketing your particular book, it also does limit you, it does pigeonhole you. Because what happens when someone decides, well, you have too many elements of this genre, so you fit into this category versus this category, but you as the author believe that, no, it's this category. Like, it can get really problematic and out of hand in that aspect. Because for someone like me, yes, my tale is what I consider to be traditional high fantasy. So if you don't like reading something immersive with, as they are alluded, lots of history and backstory and stuff that you find in Lord of the Rings or J.R.R. Martin, my book probably isn't for you. But really, my tale, it's really deceptive. It's a thematic book about racism, misogyny, colonialism, and things like that, wrapped in the outer shell of a high fantasy book. So if you don't want to read about all that other stuff, and you just want to read about kings and princes and battles and stuff, you might not like my book either. But when I allocate it on Amazon, it's going to be high fantasy, epic fantasy, blah, blah, blah. So what happens when it doesn't allow you to escape the skin that someone's going to ascribe to you if you only, if they only say, no, you are P.L. Stuart, your book is high fantasy, end of story, full stop, right? Well, there's some romance elements in my book. There's, you know, what happens with that, right? And I know there's subcategories. Even I go back to Amazon. You know, some people are very adept at strategically marketing their books so that, shall we say, those so that they dominate certain categories. Whether or not they actually fit those categories, I think we're all laughing because we all know what we all know what time it is there.
Yeah.
But we won't go into the whole other discussion. But anyways, I think the group hopefully knows what I'm getting at. So
Definitely, definitely. Um, I think it's one of those things you have to live and let die. Um, because categories like Adam said and like P.O. Stewart enhanced on, it's just one of those things that's just it's just always going to be a force that we have to reckon with as authors, and the readers kind of like have to reconcile with those aspects of the literary world. And it's just it's it's one of those things, like Adam said, you have to look at certain things about what you're writing, and as you're putting it out there, you're just gonna have to figure out where it fits in, and kind of like have to almost like be in the head of the reader and kind of like figure out what you think they're going to enjoy about your book and what it is that you think they're going to think your book is, and find that, and then kind of like just market it to them, and also play a game of percentages. Like for example, my book, like it's fantasy, it's a high fantasy, but there's a percentage of it that is going to be sci-fi. It's going to have sci-fi elements to it. It's going to have romantic elements to it and stuff, and YA elements to it. But if I play a game of percentages, if I play a game of percentages, it's gonna be a thing like probably 60 to 70% of it is gonna be high fantasy, and so I have to reckon with the fact that I have to place that in that category, and then let the rest of it speak for itself in subcategories and stuff like that. And so you have to kind of like figure out, how much of it is high fantasy, how much of it is epic sci-fi, and pick that and make it the dominant factor of your book. So if it's past 50%, then it is, you can place that in that dominant category of whether it's fantasy or sci-fi or cyberpunk or whatever it is that you're writing.
Hmm. Seymour, what about like how would how I'm interested to hear how your opinions are about the whole thing, especially with Blood and Steel, because even I would categorize it as a gritty fantasy. But even that, like, how would you categorize it? How do did you face any problems with that?
No, I kind of knew from the get-go the themes and what genre it would be. But hearing you guys all speak about the difference between fantasy and genre, um, I kind of feel like they're basically two sides of the same coin,
Yeah.
because the themes you explore in both genres are kind of similar, but from different with different flavor, right? It's all matter. It's basically the same ice cream but different flavor. Is it chocolate ice cream? Here's vanilla. Which one do you prefer? Do you feel like vanilla today, or do you feel like chocolate? I'll give you an example. Different races in fantasy. There's orcs. There's elves. There's dragons. So some intellectual beasts and some just regular beasts. And with fantasy, it's creatures from different planets. There are aliens. So there's amphibians. There's your Vulcans, those are your, Chewbacca's and stuff like that. So the same thing, basically, different races, but one is fantasy and this whole explanation of different genetics, and the other is fantasy, everything explained by everybody having different gods and created from different elements, kind of like that. But you can still explore the same themes in both stories. You can explore about immortality or mortality in both stories. One is about, you know, uh, existing in an endless space, and what does it mean to be alive, right? Over the course, human life is so short in a span of a life of a universe. It's not even a blink. The existence of our sun is probably going to be a blink. We're less than that. So it's the question, like, what is infinite in an infinite space? And the same with the fantasy elements, like, oh, here's an immortal creature that lives forever, but he has to suffer witnessing his friends and family die over and over again, unable, and it is their afterlife, right? So the similar themes but different flavors. So to me, it's just basically whichever you feel like. And obviously, there's still subgenres within each group. Fantasy has greedy fantasy, high fantasy, um, while the science fiction has cyberpunk, uh, you know, distant future, super surreal stuff, and grounded in reality. That's more, or the mixture of both, like Star Wars, which is has elements of both fantasy and
No,
science
Star
fiction.
Wars is pure space opera.
No, I definitely
No, no
argue.
connection to reality.
Oh, okay, I'll give you that. But I'll definitely argue with Seymour's thing that it's definitely a little bit fantasy too, just because the actual just like history and like just lore
Yeah.
of like the planet. I mean, every time they visit a planet, which is the crazy part, they're in the future, but then there's ruins everywhere. So you're like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Well,
Yeah,
every time
Jedi
you travel,
Knights. Yeah.
Every time
Yeah.
they'll
every
even
time you
go
travel
to.
to a new planet, it's like, well, do you consider the amount of time that passed? Because traveling from star to star, and stars every time they move around, so you're not traveling to where they are now, you're traveling to where they would be, right? So it depends how grounded you want to get with your science fiction. Do you want it to be super grounded where you follow the laws of physics to the T, or do you want it to be more free falling where it's like, it's whatever?
Well, I think also coming back to AR's point, and I think what you were really trying to get at beneath your question was that if you're writing sci-fi and you're writing fantasy, that to a certain point there's a crossover, and that crossover should be so that they are blended almost together so that your readers or whatever aren't really picking and choosing between those two things, and that if you're a sci-fi reader that you should be able to enjoy high fantasy and vice versa. And correct me if that's what you were trying to get at, that those two things are so intricately linked that oftentimes that you can enjoy both if you are one or the other.
I mean, definitely. If you go back to the start of theater, right, to the Greeks, right, with the faces of the and the right, the smile in the faces, right. It's drama and comedy. That was the basis of what that was the two genres that they only had. But even if you go back then, they didn't classify drama and comedy as two different things. It was one genre. It was dramedy. Well, they obviously didn't call it dramedy, but they looked at the smile and the frown as two faces of the same type of story. That all of life had that view of they could be dramatic or comedic on the viewpoint that you had. They literally started um what's the word? Like spoofing. Like let's say that they would have like some politician running amok. The next play that you would catch in the agora would be somebody with like a face that depicted that politician with like a huge nose, and he walking around doing whatever the heck. That's what I mean. That's I think even then they understood that and for whatever reason, as we've like grown in the industry, and there's been like obviously so much more writers and so much just saturation of content. I think that is what like has made people to be like, all right, well, I don't like this third of it, but I like this third of it, and I like this third of it. But to me, that kind of annoys me because it's like writing is writing, is writing is writing. It doesn't matter about genre. It doesn't matter about anything. If a book is dope, it's dope. You know?
True, but again, if they don't like something, then they're not going to like it, no matter what genre it is. It's written in. They are either going to like the book or not like the book. The
I don't know about
classic.
that. I don't like high fantasy, but I ended up loving Game of Thrones just because again, writing style.
But again, you just proved my point. You like that book despite what the genre is. You don't like the genre, but you love the book. People are going to like a book based on whether or not they like the book. Now, that's a totally different discussion than them picking the book up in the first place because they don't like the genre. That is a completely different discussion. That's marketing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think break it down to go back to the time, my dear friends, when physical brick and mortar bookstore stores are much more the thing rather than clicking and buying on Amazon, etc. Right? So when you walk to a bookstore and you just I'm a bookstore creeper. I'm not a big shopper, but I love going to bookstores. I love the feel of just wandering around and having my Starbucks and just going into all the sections, even sections I'm not even reading anything in, just to have that experience, right? So if I went to a bookstore, I'll go to the normally I'm going to go normally to the fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction sections for sure, no matter what I do. But I'll also browse through the, what's new, popular titles, bestsellers, you know what I mean? But if I go in there and I see something that just catches my eye and has nothing to do with fantasy or sci-fi, and it just catches my eye, I pick it up, I look at the back cover, and it looks intriguing, and I'm going to buy the book. And if the book is good, just like Adam says, I think it's a good book. But I think it's so much more now about how you attract people to your book, because it's all so much now. It's online, so there's no such thing as yeah, of course you browse online, of course you can prove yourself, but people now are just they get to that point where okay, you know what, I like what I like, and I'm gonna go unless someone recommends it to me, or unless I know the person, etc. A lot of times I will go straight to see what's new in sci-fi, fantasy, blah 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 blah. I'll also look at the popular titles, and if a popular title catches my eye, again, as Adam said, I'll buy the book. It has nothing to do with fantasy, but this looks like a great book. So I concur with Adam in that it's so much is about marketing, and it's so much more about if you write a good book, the odds are that you will blow genres apart out of the water. You will have people that cross over, and everybody talks about crossover appeal, and you know what crossover appeal is, and how you get crossover appeal out of your genre. But really and truly, if your book is good, the odds are someone else who doesn't read that type of book is probably going to read it at some point and like it, right? So,
I,
Um.
and the genres. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to
Oh
cut
no,
you
you
off,
good. You
but
good.
it was actually going back to a point that you made because you can put all sorts of other little nuggets of other genres into your book, no matter what you're writing. I mean, my first one, it's somebody described it as kind of a James Bond tribute. It somebody also could you could also describe it as a mystery because they're trying to figure out what's going on. The whole book is about them trying to figure out why this initial event happened. So it's a mystery, but it's set in a science fiction place. There are elements of romance in almost any book. There are elements of romance. There are elements of political intrigue. You know, the and the high drama and the literary fiction. So all that stuff, and that can get in people, and people can love those little bites. They might not be ready to sit down to have a whole meal of romance, but a couple little bites throughout the book, and it adds to the book. Just as an example.
Hmm. I have something I want to say to that, but Sam,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say that at the end of the day, there's two discussions that are going on right now, right? Is how pretty much categories or genres are affecting literally like our literary world, and why you know it's happening, right? And for me, I could say to why is that would be because strictly because of publishing and marketing is the number one reason why it has grown, and it has kind of like subdivided itself into so many sections. And that's a no-brainer because the further back you go, the less the less they are of of genres, right? And you can keep going back until there's
bingo,
nothing left.
bingo, yeah,
um and so like if you look at the Tolkien days, there's literally like maybe three or four, like an epic book, religious, and nonfiction and fiction, pretty much in those times, right? And so those are the whys, and when it comes to the how it's affecting us, it's one of those things where there's really never going to be an answer. But what I can say is that it can sometimes be unfortunate, but it can also be a fortunate occurrence depending on how you look at it. Because you can take, for example, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein for it, and at the time when it came out, there is no genre for it. Like, it's just a good book that came out. You can't put it anywhere, however you read into it. But now there is a genre for it, because the publishers have made it that way.
Hmm.
And that's over time. And so it's just one of those things. You just have to look at it that way, is that it's just the times we're living in, and we just have to deal with it, unless there is some crazy shift that happens that says that books are all broken back down into a one solid thing, that is like your book is either good or not good,
Then
then
burn them.
yeah, or that, go Fahrenheit for on the books. But
451.
right, 451 on the
Yeah.
books. But yeah, so it's just one of those things. It's a bilateral conversation where it's the why and there's the how, and those are the two things that are
But
competing.
where's the cash?
Right, exactly.
I need cash.
Well, the
Exactly.
cash is the cash is in traditional publishing, because
Correct.
let's face facts, right? Like, most of us are indies. I remember people, when somebody critiqued my book, said, I loved it, but you know what? You can never sell to traditional publisher because you do too much genre bending. You do
Right.
too many. You mix genres too much. And if you try to publish, you need to stick to one genre. You can't have too much of this. It needs to be flow this way, just one way. And
Right.
that doesn't work for me. So I don't know how you guys feel, but that don't work for me. Right? My book is what it is, right? I don't want to change it to fit, a certain category or genre. I think, again, to your point, Sam and Adam and everyone else, it's pigeonholing, right? I don't want to be stovepipe that way, right? I want to be able to write what I want to write. I mean, that's why I'll never be traditionally published, because if someone says, well, you have 35% romance in your book, so your second category must be romance. Really? Like, yeah, so that doesn't work for me.
Right.
There was one time in an interview, Quentin Tarantino was being asked, not even asked, but he was being like scolded by the person. He was like, "Oh, how can you, a white male, write a story about an African slave?" Blah blah. And before the guy even finished the question, he was like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. What are you talking about? I pay for the
Yeah,
production. I pay for the actors.
yeah.
Who are you? I can do whatever I want." And right there, it was like, all right, what else do you want to hear from any other creator? I want to put that on like a stamp, get it tattooed as like a video thing in my back. So anybody talk shit, I can just roll up my shirt, be like, wait a minute, just wait for the gift to reload.
I love it. I love it because I write from the perspective of a white man, a white privileged prince who essentially becomes woke, and that is not who I am. But are you telling me I can't write that? Are you telling me that Adam can't write as a black man, or
Right.
SZ can't write? Like, that doesn't, the pigeonholing stuff. So long. The publishing industry, and now I keep wanting to hate my thing. Amazon again, I did it again. They're all trying to put us into these neat little holes that fit X, right? And you can go there, and if you think it's going to behoove you and selling books, I don't blame anyone for going there, because that's what we all want to do. But at the same time, creative expression and creative freedom, I don't want to see mine curtailed because someone needs to fit me into a specific category. That's not what I started writing books for. I published my first book in my 50s, man. I don't have that much time. I, I don't want anyone controlling that aspect of how I write to that extent. So,
Right. I think we can all speak to that, especially from being indie authors, right? Like that's the beauty of being an indie author, is the freedom, to be able to pretty much write exactly what you want to write without, like you said, having to fit in the pigeonholes, So
Yeah, and if you look at the figures, I mean, this is where the money's at. Traditional publishers, I
yeah.
mean, are kicking like pennies back to the authors based on like on great books too. Whereas like indie, there was I was reading about this guy in like England that made more money like in 2019 than like the top five traditional authors combined, and he just raked it because he was just doing self-publishing. I mean, he was getting 70% of his income. I mean, 70% of the sales from the book right into his pocket. Well,
right.
actually, it ended up being like 65% because Amazon kicks off a little bit too.
Yeah.
But bastards. What can you do? But at the end of the
Get paid.
day, yeah, at the end of the day, the whole, especially the whole thing with the pigeonholing that Amazon does. Amazon is a finicky beast because they really are the better of two evils. I mean, you compare it to traditional publishing, and you want to call pigeonholing. I mean, think about the amount of amazing books that we could have had like 20 years ago that like somebody brought up to like some dude, and just because his wife left him a day before, he was just like, I'm not reading that shit, and threw it away, never to be heard about again. Like I don't know why I have that thought frequently, especially if you look into like Harry Potter, because again, it baffles me how big that book got, right? Just like it's unreal. I mean, she published it and it sold 30,000 copies the first month in Glasgow, England. I'll say that one more time. So she published it, and the first month of publishing it, it sold 30,000 copies in her hometown.
Yeah.
If any of us made 30,000 copies worldwide in our first month, listen, I'm sending any of you a champagne bottle. That's that is the craziest shit ever. She did
It's a
it
good
in
thing it's
Glasgow,
recording right
England.
now.
What?
It's a good thing it's recording right now because when it happens, you're gonna call it
Hold you
Hold
to
me
it,
to
man.
it. I don't
Hold you
know.
to
Hold you to it.
You hold me to it. 30,000 in a month. You hold me to it. You definitely
Yeah.
hold me to that. That's insane.
I mean, that's timing, right? Especially for her. Yeah, it was a lot of timing, a lot of patience. And like if you look at her story, it's like it's the grind, right? It's the
Grind.
grind to get in there, the
Yeah.
phases, and surmounting all of that to finally get to that point. And it's just one of those things that you had never seen a book like that, so much that her book defined the new talking about genres.
Mm.
Mhm.
She birthed the new genre just
Yeah.
by
Yeah. Induction fantasy is a thing now because of
right,
her. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Publishers had to literally pull out a whole new genre just to market that. And so it's just one of those things, it's just a game changer, timing, and all of that just kind of like fits
Yeah.
that, you know, and so it's just one of those things.
30,000 copies, we would all, I think, be ecstatic in the lifetime of our books to sell
Oh my
30,000
God,
30,000
copies.
yeah.
I
copies.
like the average trad published book sells 3,000 copies in its lifetime. The average indie book sells about 350,
Yeah,
right? So 30,000 copies. So
First month.
it's impressive.
Locally.
yeah, that's madness. That's. I mean, either any one of the towns related to her, or I don't know, but I
That's
I,
what I'm
I
saying.
can't even fathom that.
It doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't make sense. I didn't even grow up on the book. That's why. I wasn't on the Harry Potter like in a fanatics. Although I do remember when I was like finally like old enough to start paying attention. I remember when Deathly Hallows came out.
yeah.
The lines for that at the movie theater were just like
yeah.
rapping. It was
Oh
unreal.
yeah, oh yeah,
It was crazy. It was the first time I ever saw that type of like mania. And when Star Wars 3 came out,
yeah,
like the third prequel one, that was another one that was just like I
Yeah.
had never seen that before. You know what I mean?
yeah,
We live in an age that like most movies can be downloaded, and most people have a little more patience now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Back then is when people were really breaking it through. Although with COVID, I think we might have a resurgence of that in a couple of years when
yeah.
people are finally like able to go back to the movies and a really good movie comes out. I bet a lot of studios are holding on to some good shit for that because
Yeah,
that's gonna be a huge. I mean,
Mhm.
Godzilla broke records. I mean, who would think
yeah,
Godzilla? It's another monster fighting movie.
yeah. And
Godzilla.
I and honestly, I don't even think you could have that big, like especially nowadays, with all the with how publishing and any publishing is going. I don't even think you can have that big of an impact like how um um um
Harry Potter.
like yeah Harry Potter had at the time. Like it's impossible to have that big of attraction, no matter how good your book is, because of the detraction of everything that's going on with Amazon and indie publishers and trad publishers and pretty much like publishers that are like a little bit of both, like chimera publishers that are both like trad and indie at the same time. So you have all these forces that are pulling all the attention away, so that there isn't you know these big standout or juggernauts anymore. Like them, how the household names, but there isn't new emerging like superstars that are gonna like literally make a big shift and wave inside of the publishing arena anymore.
Hmm.
It's like a
Yeah, it's,
bygone era almost.
Arena's a highlight that word.
Yeah.
Arena, circle, put the fucking arrows around it.
Right.
it's so hard to define what, because everything's changed now so much that everybody can be successful in their own little corner,
Yeah.
niche area of the world
Yeah.
where, you know what I mean? If you're a bestseller on Amazon in one category versus you're a bestseller in your hometown, as we talked about here for basis, you're a bestseller on your individual indie slash hybrid publishers bookstore, right? Versus, you know, you're a bestseller on through Wattpad, or your bestseller like
Goodreads.
Yeah. So many.
Goodreads.
So
Yeah, yeah, you could dominate in your own little niche and still feel good about, well, you know, I dominated, right? Like,
right. Right.
That is true.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's
The
very true.
platforms are many. The platforms are many.
Well, it goes back to the whole thing about marketing, and it was actually kind of what Adam, uh, kind of like rightly pointed out, that was basically the whole thing about the whole genre thing. It's all about marketing, right?
Yep.
So, and specifically, Adam brought up a point that, you know, that there's no reason why you can't bring in elements of other genres into a genre that you're writing. But the thing that I question, as far as a marketing standpoint, when do you know at what things to market and what not? For example, let's say that you're writing a book and it has a 5% YA element. Is that 5% worth marketing for? Or do you set multiple marketing points where maybe you have one trailer that kind of exuberates that element of it a little bit more, and then you have another one that exuberates more of the romance side of it, and then another one that has like more of the sci-fi? Like, how do you, from a marketing standpoint, because I don't believe that it's impossible to, well, actually maybe a little bit, 30,000, but you know what, I'll take 10,000 my first month. What are you talking about? It's insane. So how can we study that marketing and use it in our own terms for the indies? That's the main reason why I bring all these like things up, and why I'm always studying all the different statistics and graphs. How can we use the things that we've been shown basically and use it for our own advantage? Listen, 50 Shades of Grey sold more copies than the Bible. All right, what the fuck? How can we do this, folks? More than the Bible.
Are you saying there's a collaboration between Bible and create the best-selling book of all time?
That's what we need to do. Jesus XXX.
I think that's been made already. I think that's been made already. You guys just look at the right websites. I think that's been made already.
There's probably a fanfic out there for sure.
34, if it exists. To your point, I would say part of the marketing depends on whether or not your intent is to include that element, or if it's simply an element which was included naturally as you wrote the book. So, you know, if there's a piece of your book which, you know, veers for a while into YA territory because it's necessary for the story, for example, you know, it reads like a YA, all right? But the only reason it reads like a YA is because the story demanded that it be written that way. Then I wouldn't necessarily market that as anything YA. You're marketing what you intended to put in there, the direction you wanted it to take, not necessarily the direction it ended up going in. You know, speaking as somebody who does not plot out his books, you know, I'm always thrilled to find out how the book ends, because I'm finding out, you know, how the book ends. I'm not, you know, it's not the end goal. So if you, one of the marketing things I did for the first book is because it is a mystery. You know, and they're trying to find out. It's a whodunit. So that is deliberate. So that is one of the marketing points. You know, if there were other elements then that come in, they don't get marketed as much because they're secondary.
does it come down to, though, at the end of the day, I'm sorry to say this, but what's hot? Like, I remember, if you have kids, like my youngest daughter, who's now a teenager, I remember walking around the mall all day looking for fidget spinners when fidget spinners were in.
Oh my god.
And a fidget spinner right now is sitting in some dusty issues, some dusty bin somewhere. It's done, right? Like, so I mean, for me, my biggest worry, to be honest with you, was that high fantasy was on its way out. Because unfortunately, and I think we had this, I'm not sure if I had this conversation with AR, it's like about, there's authors right now who write high fantasy, world-class, top-selling authors, who it seems that they've kind of lost it, or they seem like, I'm not saying that's true, I'm saying they seem like they're pumping out the same kind of stale ideas, and that their books, they know their books are going to be a preemptive bestseller, so they don't need to put a particular, I'm not saying they're doing it, I'm not accusing you, I'm just saying that's the perception, right? So, and they have to see high fantasy authors, and I was worried, okay, well, high fantasy is dead. My book might not sell because it's not Vogue. People want YA, they want, like, vampires have come in and out 3 times in the time that, like, high fantasy is now taking it to go down. So I figured it could come back, but at the same time, that was a legitimate worry for me. But I think so much of it comes down to what's hot. I think if you look at your subcategories, how your book is marketed, and you realize, say, for example, well, that erotic high fantasy stuff is really the bomb right now, and I can find a way to tweak it was funny. It was so funny. My wife was there yesterday. She's my witness. Is a very popular guy. I really like him. He's a well-known fantasy author, very excellent fantasy author, award-winning guy. And I looked at his book today. It's like erotic high fantasy, number 6 in erotic high fantasy on Amazon. I read his book. There's no erotic in there, but guess what? He gets to put, a nice cool little sticker that he's, number 5 or whatever he was, and so I think a lot of it is what's hot, man. Market, if you want to dominate, if you want to sell books, you want to get that notoriety, market your book into what's hot. Because, if vampires are hot right now, and even if you have a sniff of a vampire in your book or something like it, and you can get that category and dominate and increase your sales, why not, right? I guess that's the way it rolls.
Mark my words, I'm going to get bestseller in nonfiction dog memoirs. You already know. What's up? Now, Seymour, were you about to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, at this point, you have these things where it's just like, you're either writing what you want, writing what you like, and F the market, writing to market.
True that.
Or you're marketing
True
to
that.
market.
True that. True that.
Yeah. So,
True that.
and there's at some points where some of those things meet, right? You can write what you're loving, and then it can also align with what's hot on the market. And that's, that's also one of those things where it's just like, oh, cool, I can both write what I love and also market, it to, to it be in the category of what's hot at the same time. And that's fortunate, if you're in that category. But, it's just one of those things. It's like, how do you balance it? How do you, if you're not writing what's hot, or if you're not writing what's to the market, how do you get it out there? And do you just market it to the market that is hot, or do you just say, you know what, I don't really care? Or do you just write to market and say, like, I really do care, and I'm just gonna, do that? And so it's one of those things you got to juggle, and it comes back to being an indie publisher, right? Because the publishers are gonna have you write to market because they, it's
exactly,
money, it's money.
Exactly.
And so it's just, it's one of those things.
Exactly.
Well, it goes back to Seymour's point, where's the cash? That's the whole thing. I mean, for as much as we're passionate about this, and I don't think I have to express too much on how each of us are passionate about our individual projects. We at least want a break-even point. Is that so hard? Is that so much to ask for? At least for as an equal energy that I put in, at least an equal back. I'm not even saying that I'm gonna go out and buy a new Tesla, but just a return on some money. That's it. And that's the thing that you're fighting there, is that, like, you're almost having an argument with, like, the studio version of yourself, where, like, it's like, all right, well, we need to make money back though, so whatever you got to do, you put on your red lipstick, you put on that dress, you do what you got to do, all right? You got to make the money back. right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
PL and I were talking about that.
Yeah.
Like every time certain authors feel like bumping up their sales a little bit, they LOL, right?
Oh, oh, yeah.
Well, at least we know what AR is doing for a living.
Hey, well, that's the whole thing, right? Is that like you have that argument within your that inner monologue, but then you kind of have to like think back and say, oh, well, I also have like artistic integrity, right? And like there's certain things that you don't want to go to, and like the whole thing, turn the other cheek, all that thing, Jesus XXX, right? And it just molds into like something else that it just all goes back to you. Know what I mean? And just like the marketing, and I guess I don't know. Really, there's no answer to this. It's almost a cone that you just have to like we just sit together and think and trade tools, and really, who knows? Like how to best market in this thing with oversaturation. Amazon this year is dropping 30 million indie titles. 30 million.
Right.
How are you gonna? And these are new. Not that like Stephen King's re-releasing a new edition. Nah, 30 million other authors are pumping out shit, and we're competing against that.
So, but Amazon sells 70% of the world's books. Like, how do you like even trad and AR? I had this discussion before about if Amazon just wanted to wave its wand and go, listen, man, we're done with trad. We're just gonna take them over because other than antitrust laws, there's nothing stopping them. It's like one of us buying a car. That's the money to them. So then it's done. So then there is no more real trad, or trad is what Amazon says it is. And unless you're a former president writing his memoirs, a movie star, an established author, who's getting published trad, right? Like that won't exist. It also would be just all the rest of us trying to scrap for our piece, right? So I feel that and I give AR a lot of credit for this. What he's done, he's really cutting edge his time. Is that the future may or may not be us just all having our own publishing companies, and you just publish your business, and that's it, right? So
yeah, especially with the increase of blockchain and like all that, it could be that just becomes what it is, right? That you especially to Seymour's point again too, with like everybody just stealing copies of certain things, it could be that we get to a point that what you want is the actual artistic code to say like, oh yeah, no, I bought this book from the author. This isn't some like regular copy or whatever. The same thing that people do with the blockchain artists nowadays, like that guy that puts like the GIFs in the glass and whatnot. The reason why that is valued so much is because he puts a blockchain on it, and that's like an individual code. It's like a digital code that only you have. Maybe we'll get to that point that's what we start doing. We start marketing that way. It's like, yeah, you can go and get Amazon for whatever the fuck, but hey, you want the golden ticket, the high five, my actual signature, whatever you want. A picture of my dog, a gif of me taking a shit. I don't know, whatever people are into.
I made way more money selling author copies that I get from my publisher at cost out of my house, packaging, getting email addresses, getting running to the post office, all this stuff. I made way more money selling individual author copies in terms of the margins than I ever will on Amazon or my indie publisher or whatever, Barnes and Nobles, physical bookstores. Like my book is in physical bookstores. It's on almost any major platform. So anything that Ingram has, it's on it. But I make my wife and I sitting there, at 11 o'clock at night trying to make sure that sticker is right on the package and, running with making people upset in the post office line because I got 50 books to mail out. Like, yeah, that I make way more for that. Is it ideal? Because it's time consuming, man. And you know what? But honestly, my margins are like way better on that stuff than I get $11 off a 30 book off of my indie publisher, and that's considered really good. $11 and a 30. On Amazon, I get $2 on a 30-book book, right? Like,
wait, say that again.
Off of Amazon, not ebooks. Ebooks and margin are different. So say a $7 ebook, I'll get $5. Those are good. But because of the way the print is and all that stuff, I'll basically get like $2 off a 30-book book off of Amazon.
Oh, 30 bucks, yeah, because the whole 70% thing cuts off when it goes anything over $10. So now you're looking at like
Yeah,
30%. And if you have anybody else taking a piece of your pie from there,
which is
which my indie publisher does. So yeah, so they get their cut, right?
yeah,
So like I said, my indie publisher, if I get solid books off of them, make it $11 out of 30, I could definitely live with that. But you know, like that's yeah, those are the margins, man. So
You guys are making money?
yeah, yeah,
wait, you're making money off this? What the hell?
Wait, what?
yeah, it's crazy, hey? Like you don't expect like, and that's the thing is indies like okay, so as Herbal, like as AR said, we all yes we do it for the love, but we all want to make money, man. We all want to make money.
Break even, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, just yeah, like just
Snickers, god damn.
and you don't know if you'll ever get another sale after the first one you get, or the first 15 or the first 100, and you just don't know. And you don't know if Amazon ads work, you don't know if this works, you know, you try everything, and really truly you don't know, because Sam said, just like that, the industry is evolving so rapidly. You don't know, like, you know, is this working or is this working? Like, I read an article that I think I talked with AR, like, there's a really top indie publisher that she's like, when I'm not on Twitter, if I'm not on Twitter for that day, my sales drop by 15%. 15%. I'm like, wow. And hey, yeah, I've sold books on Twitter, but you know, there's some people that are not on Twitter, they're selling way more books than me. Like, you wonder, okay, what are they doing? But like, yeah, you just don't know what's working, right? And there's no, the data we have is all empirical. It's all, well, you know, Sam said this, and Seymour said this, and you know, AR said this about this, but really, truly, we don't have this, we don't have hard stats, right? So it's so hard to navigate this game, man. So
because what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for the other. You know, that's proven. You know, like time and time again. Especially if you're not published, you know, because publishers can make a method, you know, they create methods to sell, you know, because they know, you know, they play that middleman role, and so like they know what works and what doesn't work for them because they're so constricted to that pigeonhole, and that's what their strengths are, right? That's what plays to their strengths because they know exactly what they're selling and to who they're selling, who their crowds are, and stuff like that. But for us, it's like, you know, we're in the desert sometimes for the most part, you know, trying to find water, you know, and so sometimes you do, sometimes, you know, you just eat sand thinking it's water, you know, you just have to play the game, you know, like, you just see mirages playing tricks on you and stuff like that, and so it's just one of those things and stuff. But you know, and also I would say persistence, right? Persistence is the name of the game, especially for us. You know, you just gotta keep going, you know, like you gotta just gotta keep boxing away until you hit KO, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the people who are succeeding right now is just, you know, you never stop. Lucky if you come out and, you know, you hit the park. That's, you know, that's one out of, you know, I don't even know what the statistics are on that. You know, I don't know if you guys know Evan Winter.
oh yeah, we talked about last time, AR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those indie, you know, authors who struck lightning. You know, just right away. You know, he hit.
Medea. Oh,
Hey
my
Seymour, that's your ticket, man, because he was crept on Reddit by Orbit. That's how he got it. So Seymour, that's your ticket, bro. Stay on Reddit, man, because that's how Evan got popped. Some big executive from Orbit was creeping his stuff, and then they're like, "Oh, this guy's hot," and they picked him up. They asked to get an agent. So I think maybe Seymour is going to be the most successful out of anybody because he's got the right platform.
Right, and it's just one of those things. It's like, you know, you either hit lightning like him, or, you know, you're just stranded, you know, for a little while. And I think like he also had a couple of things working for him, like his title, you know, his cover. You know, he did really well with his cover. His title had dragons in it, which is that automatically is a tractor for, you know, for traffic. And so like he did a couple of things. You can tell that, you know, he was smart with it. You know, he was smart with it, and you know, it kind of like struck. And so it's just one of those things, right? It's just one of those.
He was a little bit connected too. He had been like either film industry or something. He had some like he wasn't just
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like he had some hookups, right? So
and also he had time on his side, right? Because he took off time from making that money from, you know, like he said, he had a whole year just to sit down and really, you know, dedicate to just writing, you know. If either of us had, you know, imagine like, you know, just having a great year without having to work, having to think about anything, you just sit down and just polish out a work, you know, that's that's gold. You know, you can come up with some gold, and so he
I'm
had a
telling
lot
you.
of things working for him. So it's tough.
I spent the last 2 days working on my fucking taxes. I wish I could have like, I wish I could have hung out and looked at the stars, thought about my Iris of Mercy or whatever. No, but I mean, like you're preaching the songs right now. And I have credit has to be given where it's due. Medea, the honey cake series.
Yes, yes,
Jesus,
yes,
talk about a woman. I mean,
yes.
4 years ago, this woman was not a writer. She didn't even have her mind in the industry, and now she's at the point that she's already working on getting her children's stories and made into like production TV shows. Like a production
Mhm,
company
mhm.
reached out to her and was like, "Yeah, let's pitch to Amazon and Netflix and shit." 3 years ago, the
Yeah.
woman is an just
Yeah,
unreal,
she's crazy. Yeah.
and she does it in the way that like it's just like it's really respectable. There's no
Mhm.
frills around her marketing. There's nothing. She's not trying to sell you on anything crazy. She's like, this is the book. This is what we're doing, and that's it. I mean, it's genius. Everything that like we talked about on when I spoke to her last was just genius. She's just a powerhouse of just everything. Again, it's one of those things that I guess is the opposite side of things, right? Because when you pick up like a really good book by an indie author and you look at the reviews and it's like, oh, like 9 people reviewed this. That's like that seems like really low. It seems like it should have like 1,000 reviews and all this shit. It's almost disheartening because it's like, all right, how did this person fuck up? They have a good cover, good writing. I don't see many errors. The writing is good to me. What is the difference between this and like this person that just broke the bank on the shit that they just released? What is the difference here? What am I missing? So it's always good to see people like Medea that pop up and it's like, oh no, this is still a possibility for us. We just have to make
Oh
sure
yeah.
we get our shit together,
Yeah.
you know?
I think a lot of it too, like, so Adam, you've written several books, right? Like three, four, five. So to be honest with you, I think I talked about this too with AR. A lot of it comes down to volume, how many books you can pump out in in the quickest amount of time. Especially if you have a series, that's like gold. So you can have the books sell on each other. So, well, you gotta read book one because you won't understand book two, three, four, five, six, seven. You don't read that, and a lot of it I honestly think is timing, and we talked about timing because when you release a series, everybody. I know there was something. I think it was December. There was a date in December last year where there was something like on Amazon. There was something like 8,000 or 10,000 books being released on a single day, right? Like, how do you get above that noise, right? Like when that many people are releasing their book on a single day, like how do you get above that noise? And I don't know somebody I'm sure has the algorithms figured out as to what day of the year, what time, what hour you should publish your book. I'm not that smart. I don't have that background, but someone's figured it out. But I honestly think that timing has some, like J.K. Rowling, as you so definitely talked about that. That's timing too. Like, uh, you know, but I also feel too that a lot of people. So for someone like Adam, who is established, so Adam's an established writer. When you have some credibility behind your name, when you've proven that you're not a one-hit wonder, or you don't just spew out garbage, I think people will be more inclined to buy your stuff. Like me, I have one book, so even if you think my book is amazing, well, let's see if you can do it again. Let's see what like I think that also has a lot to do with it. So
Right.
that's
Right.
my
Yeah,
opinion.
having a back catalog helps hugely, just because, like you said, what I did for this next one that's coming out is a month and a half ago. I got into a bunch of groups and said, "Hey, I've got a book coming out. I have advanced copies, but I need a review. I want so I only took the people who approached me. I went up and posted it. Said, okay, here it is. So if they came to me, then we talked about it, and I made sure they understood it. I need a review. Um, and what a lot of people have said is this fourth book, they could read it and understand it, even though they hadn't read the first three. So I was thrilled because, okay, somebody can pick up any of the books and get hooked. but they're still going to want to go back, like you were saying, PL. They're going to want to go back and read the other ones. So that all builds,
Yeah.
that all builds on it. If you have many, it's like you go fishing. You're going to catch more fish the more hooks you have in the water. If you have one hook, okay, you might catch an 800-pound tuna, but odds are you're probably not. But if you have 20 hooks in the water, then you're much more likely to catch something on one of them. And if they tie in together, again, it all seems to be circling back to marketing. How many places can you get your book in front of people? How many different ways can you put it in front of their eyes? How many different ways can you get their attention? Because sooner or later they'll say, all right, fine, I've seen it a million times. I'll do the look inside. Ooh, that's cool.
I think that that segues really well into like the point that the next topic I kind of want to go into, and it's kind of like the prequel thing, right? Now you take a Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, I believe. Now, phenomenal book. I remember when I heard about the synopsis on some person talking about it on Reddit. The next day I was at my library picking it up. 2 days after that, I had already read it. Amazing.
I see so much of that book in your book. I'm not comparing, but I told you before, man. Man. Your book was next level that way.
Thank you. But Ready Player Two. Now I haven't read it, but just everything that I've read, that I've read about it seems that it was one of those things that the author shouldn't have done it. He should have just gone with another title, something else. Just and I just sorry myself. I know Adam. We talked about Dogma last time when Buddy Christ. I had just watched the movie again, and I watched that, and I watched Clerks. Well, I had kind of like a Kevin Smith marathon, and even as a fan, Clerks is a genius movie if you ask me. Clerks 2 is an abomination to the Clerks name. It's an abomination. Like literally, Clerks 1 is like an existential. It's almost like a Dazed and Confused type of thing, where it's almost like it's going into like the. It's talking about like real human elements. It's not like a cartoon. It's talking about some real shit that also happens to be funny.
There is a cartoon.
I know. And then Clerks 2, it was just kind of like, oh, all right, we're just gonna turn this up to 9,000, and this is gonna be all cartoon, and like everything just became like a caricature of itself. Even just the thing that the main character kept on saying in Clerks 1, I'm not even supposed to be here today. If you pay attention to it, like that's literally it's like an existential thing. Like. He's saying that he's not supposed to be there, but he has the power to leave. So, like, what type of cyclical mind gymnastics are you playing? And it like speaks to everybody's experience, right? How many people say that they hate their jobs and then show up on time the next day without ever, putting money or putting real ideas into their passions, to the things that actually make them happy. So, going with that, and even tying in with Star Wars, right? You have the 4, 5, 6, and then people started like claiming that 1, 2, and 3 were just like an abomination. How do you feel about prequels? Do you think it's better to make something that's awesome and then leave the enigma intact? Or do you think it's interesting to go back? I, as a lore person, think it's always interesting to go back and like kind of refill information. But at the same time, are you kind of shitting on your own franchise by going back and explaining things?
You didn't like Jar Jar Binks?
Patton Oswalt has the best.
You said no like Jar Jar Binks? What are you talking about?
Patton Oswalt has the best thing. Like when he's talking about like how they explain the Force, he's like, listen, I don't need to know how hot dogs are made. I just love hot dogs. Brilliant explanation. There's certain times that it's like, you just need to leave it at the surface level, and digging up too much muddies it. Because it makes it kind of like stupid and like for whatever reason. But at the same time, I'm a huge lore fan. I always want to go back and kind of, dive deeper into something.
Well, you know me, so I already told everybody that I have prequels planned, and I totally agree with AR on you have to build on your own mythology, and you have to create this, especially with high fantasy. I can only speak to high fantasy because that's what I write. I'm not an expert in other genres. I've read almost every other genre there is probably, but high fantasy, I totally. Tolkien and Martin, the genius thing that those two especially have done is that there's people in this world who can tell you about some eighth generation distant cousin of Daenerys Targaryen that did something that no one else knows about, and they did it this way. And that is genius, because when you have that level of depth and you can reach that many people who care that much about it, that means that you've done something special. So I think prequels have to be done a certain way. I can only tell you what I've done with my prequel, or what I'm going to do with my prequel, because it isn't written yet, is that almost every book that I write in this first series is going to reference in some way back to the characters that will be featured in the prequel. So AR has read my book. So there's one character that my main character narrator in this series idolizes, and he's called the Purple Prince. And if AR remembers my book at all, there's a lot of reference to that guy. So, and there will be in continuing books. So when people get to the point when the series is done, and then they see, oh, the prequel series of the Purple Prince, this might be kind of interesting, because these tidbits that you've given me, you know, that sounds like, even though I know generally the art, and that is the trick. You can know generally from the 7 books I write now what happened to the Purple Prince, how he lived, how he died, you know, who was important to him, some of the accomplishments he made. But to make you still want to read that and still be fascinated, that means you succeeded with a prequel. So hopefully I will have, right? So because I want, my goal would be for people who read this series to somehow still, even though the other characters, the main characters, to still somehow have the Purple Prince somewhere back here, so that when he comes up in a prequel, you're like, oh, that dude, right? Oh, this might be okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I just want to say, AR, great idea to get all of us talk about our scoops. So when they're information on these guys, here's the scoop.
Yeah. Speaking on that, I don't think I'm in a position to talk about prequels, because I don't think I'll be doing a prequel, but I can say that, to like, as you said, with George R. R. Martin and with Tolkien, when they wrote their prequels, it wasn't just to expand the lore, it served a purpose to the
Make money.
aforementioned story. It was a feedback. What did you say?
To make money.
And that
Prequels made money. Can't say no to that.
cash. But yeah, it's a feedback loop, right? And if your prequel is well received, then you know that it's because it is serving that purpose, that people have first of all read your book, and then are going back and knowing that it's enriching the story that came before, and it's not just, giving, lore, or adding lore to your, to your world, because there's such a thing as adding too much sugar to your
yeah,
to your
yeah,
coffee, right? So it's just one of those things that it has to enhance the flavor, not really spike it to a certain level where you're just like, it's just too much, right? And so it's just one of those things you have to balance. What I'm doing is not so much writing prequels, but doing the Marvel way, which is cinematic
yeah,
universe, more
yeah,
literary universe, sort of like, to phrase that into perspective. And so, like, it kind of like feeds into itself at different points in the story, and not so much going back and forth, but kind of like parallel storytelling, where you get nuggets here, nuggets there, and it kind of like advances the story forward as it's being presented.
Yeah, I'm
um
on the same wavelength for that. Like, Allegory of the End basically is the prequel to titles I won't name right now, but uh, it's I guess everything really does tie back into marketing, right? Because you take Hunger Games, which is one of my favorite dystopian trilogies ever, made by the brilliant Suzanne Collins, right? And then she just released the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the
yeah.
prequel that kind of explains President Snow's come up and everything. And I've read a lot of people talking shit about that too. That it felt like it was just a prequel that she made, and to Seymour's point, to make
yeah,
money. That it was a cool idea, but for the most part, it was just kind of like I don't know, contrived or like an XYZ. But
Too much sugar.
yeah. But it makes me. It's one of those things though. Is like, if I were to ask her though, would she feel that way? Would she be like, oh no, like the hell? I had that book written before I had Hunger Games, and now people are talking shit. It's just
Right.
weird, right? Because
Right.
especially with everything we're talking about, especially what PL's talking about. What if we get to the point where we release something and somebody's gonna be? I guess it's just like paranoia, and really there's no way to curb that type of like critic anyway. But I guess it's just one of those things again, like how to best put yourself in front of the people that want to, like Christine PL was talking like was like giving me like tips on like marketing and everything. She had like a whole bunch of experience with traditional publishing and everything. And
Yeah, she's a smart lady. She's a smart lady.
yeah, and she put me on to somebody else like her, like somebody that did even more marketing than her. And they both just sat down and was like, listen, everything is about it's niche. You find your little corner, your little box, and then from there you grow. Because the whole thing from that is that you have a dedicated little home base, right? I mean, to take my example of Breaking Bad, Breaking Bad didn't have that great of like viewership in the first, I think, 3 seasons. It wasn't until they got to the 4th season, and like the buzz from the people from like the avid fans, that it were a small community at first, but the buzz of them going crazy over it was enough to propel that show to the height of what it is, to the point that it's now, it's like almost Criterion level. It's like that one of the best TV shows made in American history.
Yep.
Yeah, that shit was tight.
And even then,
Yay,
talk
science.
about prequel.
Motherfucker.
And even then, prequel. You want to talk about prequel? Better Call Saul. It's a prequel to the whole universe of Breaking Bad, and I think that was done geniusly with to kind of go to Sam's point, because it was just like a different viewpoint. Like when you watch Breaking Bad, you're in there with Walter. Whatever he does, if he's like literally watching his partner's girlfriend die, you're still kind of like him because it's Walter, and you understand that's like, oh, he has cancer, he's doing it for his family and shit. It's not that until you watch Better Call Saul and you understand the infrastructure that was built by Gus and the crazy amount that he really put into that whole grid work of like, trafficking, that you start kind of disliking Walt, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, this fuck out of pride took down like 30 years of hard work by this guy out of pride,
Right.
just because pride, nothing else.
Essentially, yeah.
Well, he's the one who knocks.
Well, oh my god, just that whole scene,
The
God.
thing
Don't you
with
understand? I am the one who knocks.
the thing with prequels is you have to have characters that your readers want to know more about, and you have to have a story to tell about those characters. If you don't have a story, that's where the Star Wars prequels fell down. They had the story that they wanted to tell. Everybody wanted to know where Darth Vader came from. Okay, that's what the prequels are about. Where did Darth Vader come from? The problem is nobody cared about the characters they introduced to tell the story. There was just no love for those characters. It was, okay, we have to tell the story about how Darth Vader came about. So, all right, this happened and this happened and this happened, and you could have plugged in any one of a dozen different, stereotypical characters here, 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 and here.
I've sludged through the first trilogy a couple different times, and I've never been able to put a finger on it. Because if you look at the story, it's epic. I mean, literally, it is the start of Jedi conquering the universe, and then it is Count Dooku coming up and literally starting the Sith Empire from underneath. I mean, and even like when you look at the ships, I mean, like the big destroyers and the triangle destroyers, those used to be Republican fleets that he built and had like mass produced in order to convert into the Sith army. I mean, genius. But again, it was the emotional through line. He couldn't give a fuck about the characters. I never been able to put a finger on it.
My finger is squarely on the fact of, and it's my nemesis and my, I guess, my positive and negative, because I write in first person, okay? And you know that. So had the story included all these wonderful things, but somehow kept the action centered around essentially Anakin Skywalker himself, to the degree that you could have cared so much more about Anakin Skywalker, his point of view, what he thought, blah, blah. I think that would have succeeded. But you can't make Darth Vader's backstory really work unless it's really about Darth Vader, and so much more about Darth Vader than about Obi-Wan Kenobi and his origins and this person and their origins. Because as soon as you've lost, like, it's that catch-22, being expansive and making this great story that gives all this other stuff in there, but really, what people want to know about Darth Vader, right? Like you said, that's the whole point, right? And he became almost like a cardboard cutout of what Darth Vader was for me, because I cared way more about Obi-Wan by the time that series was done. Even though I know Obi-Wan was going to survive and that he wasn't going to die till way later, that I did about, you know what I mean? Like, I care way more about Mace Windu. I can't care way more about all those other characters, because I saw so much more of them for one thing, right? Yoda was, to me, the story is about Yoda, right? Or Obi-Wan, right? It just didn't. Darth Vader's story got lost in the shuffle. So if you make a prequel about Darth Vader and his story gets lost in the shuffle, you fail to represent his viewpoint properly, to the extent that, you know, he should be the big star of the series. He wasn't, man. He wasn't. And I think, for me, that's the finger I put on it, right? So if I'm going to write a prequel, like I said, I write in first person. So it's going to be this limited, you lose out. Let's make no bones. You lose out on a limited POV with like a first person kind of, and I was talking about books now versus movies, but if you make the story about the person you claim that the prequel is about, I think it will succeed better than if you don't.
Yeah.
No, and no, Sam, go ahead.
I know. I was just gonna say, yeah. When it comes to the prequels, definitely. When it comes to the lore, I mean, they got it right down pat. You know, like they gave you the lore to its fullest, and to me, as I was watching it, I loved the lore, you know. And at the time that I watched it, I was younger, so I didn't really care about characters so much. So to me, the prequels were like amazing. Like, I love the prequels. I know it's a sin to say, but I love the prequels. Is my favorite part of Star Wars. The prequels to me is, especially in the third one, and I feel like the third one is when they really realized how to
Yeah.
go about it, but by that time it
Yes.
was too late,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
Bingo.
Yeah,
Bingo.
the third one was like, oh my god, you watched the third one and it was like,
And the thing was about Darth Vader.
yeah, exactly.
Right?
It
For
was all
Anakin.
about him. Yeah, it was all about Anakin, and you
Yeah.
could see him turn to the dark side. You could see that slow creep towards him, and but it was at it, like I said, it was at a time it was too late. But yeah, they got all the lore right. It's just that, you know, when it
Yeah.
comes to the character and the focus of the central character, like you said, that, you know, kind of like just fell apart. But if you're not looking at the characters, they really, the lore is just amazing. Like, you know, it just
You're
really,
right.
really
And they did that turn better in one movie than Game of Thrones HBO did with Daenerys Targaryen in
Oh my god.
oh
seven
yeah,
seasons,
oh yeah,
right?
oh yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
I got to give them their props on that, because, you know, nobody bought what was happening with Daenerys. Nobody,
No.
that basically
No.
tanked the entire series just because of that one thing. People lost their minds. Yeah, there were other issues and coffee cups
Oh
on
yeah,
sets and
yeah,
blah blah.
yeah.
But what are people going to remember about why Game of Thrones flopped? They're going to remember because you tried to sell us that Daenerys turned into a baddie. You didn't give us the build up the way, as Sam said, they managed to do really well with the prequels about Darth Vader versus Anakin, and that basically it pooched the entire series. Right? Hate mail, death threats. Oh,
Yep.
because they didn't do that properly, right?
Yeah.
Just goes to show you.
Yeah, without a single doubt. I mean, I love rewatching shows that I like. I mean, I'm probably gonna start rewatching Breaking Bad for like the third time full through. I will never watch Game of Thrones again just because of how it ended. You
Yeah.
know, it's
It's
like
tough.
it's like the Greek architecture. You know what I mean? That capstone at the top is worth more, way more than any stone that you have leading up to it. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, they screwed up that capstone. Everything crumbled from that point.
Yeah.
How can you like when you rewatch Daenerys from like season like 1 and you see that rise to
Yeah,
power? How can you not see that and be like, oh yeah, but let me get a bell around you real quick.
yeah,
Let's see how you
yeah.
turn real quick. Let's see let's say you go burn that village for absolutely no reason. No reason. Some bells, and she looks at the thing and she just like, gets mad. And she goes like, all right, Sparky, let's go.
Yeah.
Although the like the cinematography for that
Oh,
episode
it's wild.
obviously wild.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I
yeah,
mean, they
it's
Them
wild.
nailed they
burning
nailed
them
a
burning
lot of
King's
things.
Landing, Jesus.
That's
That
just
was
Yeah,
pretty
crazy.
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That was wild.
It's just God, and it also goes kind of like to reception, like when it gets to the point that somebody comes up to you and goes like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you 3.5 for your book idea. We're gonna take it." At what point do you stand up and go like, "God, no, I don't want my book to be muddled. I'm good with that 3.5 actually. I'll wait till indie productions over here takes my idea unmuddled." At
Right,
what
right,
point
right.
do you stand up for your shit? You know what I mean? J.K. Rowling's talked about it all the time. There's a lot of stuff that was taken out of Harry Potter, and when she was asked about it, she said that she was more than fine with it because she understood it as a different medium. Like if you want to
Right,
read the books, there's the books, and if you want to watch the movies, there's the movies. They don't
right,
necessarily need to be like 100% canon of one another, which is
right.
an idea I respect. But at the same point, it's like I feel I'm too attached to my shit.
You know what the difference is now, though. I would respectfully submit is that now more people will go and watch the movie first and then read the books. Whereas 30 years ago, people read the books and then the movie came out and they watched the movie. And I think that's the biggest difference in how they're both marketed. And this weird, like, you know what? Let's use the Witcher as an example, right? I didn't know anything about The Witcher except for the video game. For the first, I knew there was a book, but I mean, it was irrelevant. I knew about the video game, which was awesome, and then I found out about how good the books were. But so many people are only going to know The Witcher because they are, they love Cavill and they see him as Superman, and they're going to watch him on The Witcher. They're going to watch Netflix and watch The Witcher, and then they go back and maybe play the game or maybe read the book. But do you know what I mean? So, because I think it's how these different platforms, how people see them first and perceive them, right? Because again, and I'm someone who I consider myself an avid reader and an avid fantasy reader. I heard about the books, but it was the games that got me, right? And then, okay, so you read some books, then now it's the series that has me. So, and that I don't think was possible 20, 30 years ago, right?
Mm.
So the way we're for some people, Daenerys Targaryen is Emily Clark, right? And that's it, right? And even if they go back and read the book now, they never read it. When they read the book, they're seeing Emily Clark's face. When Daenerys being described, they're seeing Emily Clark, right? And that's just the way it is. When they read Jon Snow, right, they're seeing Kit Harington. Like that's just the way it is because they've watched the HBO special first and they've grown up on these characters, and now they go back and read the book, and oh, well, in their mind's eye, that's who the characters are. And I don't think that 30, 40, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, it was like that, right? Like Henry Cavill had to make The Witcher look like the video game. He had to come as close to the video game Witcher that you see to make people go, yeah, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's the difference now, I think.
Man, that's a really solid point.
Yeah. Well, this is the last point that I'll make before I have to jet, guys. I really wish I could stay, but wifey's home. You know how that goes. Um,
Yeah. Take care. Take
so
care,
so
man.
what I would
Respect.
say about that point is I think when it comes to like movie rights and deals and stuff like that is fight as much as you can and try to get as much as you can of your opinions and stuff like that in there, but don't make it all of what you're fighting for, because at the end of the day those are two different mediums, like you said. Those are two very different mediums, and at the end of the day, there's some things that you can't see that they will be able to see, and vice versa. That translates into the movie medium. And like for example, like the J.K. Rowling, she fought for a lot of the rights for that movie to be able to have a say so. I think she's probably one of the few authors who's had the biggest say so in the franchise of like their own books. And so like she was able to like direct a lot and that and to end the Lord of the Rings, the Tolkien franchise also had a lot to say, in how those movies turn out. And you can see by that those two franchise turned out great when it comes to movie wise because they had so much to say. And so like I think like it's really important that you really fight to like inch your way in as much as possible. um but then you also have people like Stephen King, right? Who is like, sell your rights and run, right? That's in his terms, if a movie comes, give it away and just, don't even think about it and run. And so I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the author himself and like, how much they're attached to the work, and how much they see, themselves being a part of the whole thing, and personally, I would love to be more. I'm one of the authors who probably want to be more involved. If I ever got a movie deal, because just like I said, I'm attached to my work, so I would definitely love to have a big say in how the
Yeah.
movies go. And so yeah, so definitely, definitely.
Yeah, and it's just especially like talking about Stephen King, look at Nightcrawlers, I don't know if you ever
Right.
seen that, but that movie is meme worthy. It is the worst
Yeah.
shit ever
Yeah.
made. My God.
Yeah.
There's like one scene that literally is like, oh no, they're attacking us. And then they come in. They
Yeah.
paid somebody for that. The hell?
Right,
You
right.
didn't find that dude in the
He
street. And he usually got a bum to do that for like free. Um,
right.
and
He does
then
not care though. He does
no,
not care.
no,
No.
and then you
Zero
have The
cares.
Shining, which is The
Right.
Shining, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
didn't like that movie. He didn't think it was an
Right.
accurate representation
Yeah.
of the book. I mean, shit. What can it's weird how it goes.
Yeah, it does. It does.
A recent example is Ready Player One. Oh my God! Just talking about like the book versus the movie. The movie, for whatever reason, I thought the movie really kind of like uh it rounded off the edges that I thought made the book significant. One of the main things about it is that like his love interest and the main girl, spoiler alert, in the book, the his love interest that he's like obsessing of the entire story. He finds out that at the end that she's like 11 and he's like like 19 or 20 or whatnot. So he realizes right then is like, oh shit, and to me, I think that was really mature because like he kind of understands his love, like, oh, okay, yeah, I was really in love with an idea of you and not really in love with you. And like he just kind of like understands that, kind of like he matures in a different way. It was like, obviously I'm not a pedophile, curve that, and then they just like become friends, they shake hands, and that's it. And obviously in the Steven Spielberg made it that it's like, I was like, oh no, they just happen to be exactly the same age, they're gonna fuck it and
Right,
don't
right, right.
worry about it. And to me, like, I just thought that was just such a cop out because it's like you ham fist the traditional romance lead just to get that movie element in there, but you lost like the bigger overarching thing, which is the whole thing is that they live in a virtual reality. So like you more often than not get in love and get infatuated in an idea of something rather than you do on the actual thing that it represents. And I thought that was the entire thing of the book. And the movie just like cut that off almost completely. And to take it to PL's point, if you read that movie, I mean, if you watch that movie, why go back and read the book and get that whole like
Yeah.
in depth of it? Because you already
Right,
have
right,
it in your
right.
head, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And
Oh
even the
man, yeah,
scar, I
it's
mean,
crazy.
like the book, they made that the girls with disability seemed like a lot more like a disability. And in the movie, it was just like, oh my God, she has like a little scar right there. She's hideous. It's like, all
It
right,
was Hollywood
fine as
ugly,
fuck.
which is still pretty hot.
Yeah.
But don't say that's the jet, man. We don't want to
Yes.
get in any hot water, bro.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. But I would have
Yeah.
loved to stay and finish the conversation. This was awesome. I can't wait till we do it again. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure meeting all of you.
Pleasure to meet you,
I'll stay in
man.
touch with y'all.
Respect.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Ocean's Odyssey,
Definitely.
check it out. Amazon. Sam, Adam,
Hell yeah,
Addo.
man. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll be buying your stuff, man. Don't you worry about that. I can't wait.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely will have to link up everybody, man, so that
Yeah.
we
All
can
right.
definitely get on each other's stuff. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
man.
Animate.com. ANIM, the number 8, works.com. Check all this man's work out. Everything's there.
All right, man. Much appreciated, AR
All
and
right.
everybody. I'll see you guys around.
Yeah, man. Peace and respect.
Take care,
All right,
man.
peace.
Yeah.
Take it
All
easy.
right.
So, kind of to, because Adam, you have to leave in about what, 15, right?
Yeah, 15 or a little bit less. Okay,
Okay.
her class starts at
All right. So,
6
yeah.
our time.
So, to kind of wrap it up, one thing that I kind of want to turn around to you guys is, especially with everything that we've talked about, the genre bending. What do you think is the best example? And it can be in any entertainment, it can be in book and TV, whatever. What do you think is the best example of a person that really, like, you cannot put a genre on that person's work if you wanted to? It is just completely just everywhere. It has elements of everything. It's like that the candy from Jimmy Neutron. It has every flavor. To me, Maniac from Netflix, just to kind of like get the ball rolling. That thing has everything in it. It has high fantasy. It has, it has a whole bunch of comedy. It has a whole bunch of drama. I mean, one scene you can be laughing your ass off. 2 minutes later, you can be just gut wrenched.
Mm.
Great genre bending. If you were to put yourself, if you were to kind of like look at kind of a work that you think best exuberates that idea, what would you say?
I would probably say I would. You know what? Originally, I was gonna say Westworld, but I mean
Great example.
But even like, but when I go back and think about it, sometimes I think yes and no. You know what I mean? Like it has the sci-fi, obviously. It has the fantastical. It has almost like
The Western.
the Western. It's got almost kind of like a bit of like with the cloning, like it.
On the mystery.
The ministry. It's got like it's got a little bit of every. Like it's got kind of like a religious type, like cultish. Like Westworld is probably. Yeah, I guess this is as close I can think of having all those genres for me on TV, anyways. So.
I mean, that really is a great example, though. Honestly, Westworld is just. Remember the first time I watched it, I feel like it does suffer a little bit with the same thing we were talking about before. When you get to the third season, that it's like they are trying to juggle too many ideas. I would consider myself
I
a
agree.
reasonably smart person. I'm watching the third season. Like, wait a minute. What are you saying?
Yeah.
My math is wrong. What the hell? I shouldn't be doing that watching a TV show. Adam, do you anything that comes on the top of your head, or anything? Again, it doesn't have to be TV, books, anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to throw it to an author, Michael Crichton.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote across so many different genres, from thrillers to sci-fi to mysteries. I mean, you name it. And
Pandemic stuff.
Yeah, he's got a book in most of the major fiction genres, and they were consistently good. So he might not be able to jump from genre to genre within the book, but being able to write in different genres, I think is and write convincingly in different genres.
Yeah. Just I mean, before I get to that point, Seymour, anything in mind?
If you're talking about the creator who can create within different genres, I would probably have to say director Steven Spielberg, only because he has directed Oscar-winning war films, horror films, comedies. He's a versatile director. In that sense, he can jump. Like if you ask, what's he's known for, I'd be like, well, he's done everything. He's done Ready Player One. He's done science fiction. He's done fantasy. He's done horrors. War
Super
films,
8,
grounded
movies.
films.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
Super 8. It's like the
That's
kids.
J.J. Abrams.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Spielberg was an executive producer.
Spielberg in like this. that's very heavily inspired by the Spielberg's work, but that's been directed by J.J. Abrams.
You're right. It was
Um,
directed, but he had an
yeah,
EP in that, right? Spielberg.
I don't
Yeah, I think he
know.
did because that was before Star Trek, right? That was
Yeah,
before Abrams took over Star Trek, right?
yeah. And I thought that was
So
the
What was
first
it
time they worked
after?
together.
before that.
No, it
Yeah,
was
yeah, a couple years before. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
it
think so.
was before
It's
because that
but
was
yeah,
like one of the
like
things.
yeah, so like he as a creator is like very versatile. He's probably not the only one, but it's usually really hard to jump from genre to genre, especially with the directing or writing, only because not because you cannot do that, only because you have to convince your agent or your publisher to fucking do that, right? Even like recently, what's his name? Chris Rock went from comedy to he's been on Fargo, which is more drama
Yeah.
and slash
Hmm.
comedy, and now he's a star of the horror film of the Saw franchise. So, but he's a successful comedian. He should have been easily, or like Jim Carrey, he went from comedy to drama, but it was a gradual change, right? You cannot just say one movie is this, one movie is the other. It's usually people like to pigeonhole somebody. Well, you just know for comedy. I'm not gonna give you a role in a horror film. That's that. You're not gonna bring every fucking people in the theaters. So I think it's mostly politics, behind the scenes. Like, can people do that? Absolutely. Why are they doing that? Because money is the issue. But if you're talking about the franchise that blends, fantasy and uh, sci-fi, recent that comes to my mind is Artemis Fowl, because
Hmm.
it has elves, it
Hmm.
has underground cities, and it also has high-tech gadgetry. So, but obviously that we're not talking about the movie because fuck that movie. But books were kind of a blend of that. Um, so there's my answer. Creators, Steven Spielberg. Franchise that comes to my mind is Artemis Fowl. The franchise that doesn't succeed but does both is Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light from the 80s. That was a mixture of fantasy and science fiction
Yeah.
that lasted
Okay.
one season and didn't succeed.
I'd actually throw another creator, Stanley Kubrick.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, just here are some of his movies. He he directed Spartacus.
Yeah.
He directed Lolita. He directed Doctor Strangelove,
Doctor Strange,
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange,
Clockwork Orange, The
Orange,
The
Shining,
The
Shining.
Shining.
Full
Yeah,
Metal
yeah,
Jacket,
yeah, yeah.
Eyes,
Kubrick.
and
eyes
Yeah,
wide shut.
2001. And
yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
Eyes Wide
Kubrick.
Shut.
2001
Yeah,
Space Odyssey. Good God
So I
yeah.
Almighty.
mean,
No, Kubrick
how
is. Yeah.
how broad is that?
Yeah. And modern times, John Favreau. You have he made the first movie Swingers, great debut movie. Just like about kind of common life, like just like being getting to your 20s, not really knowing what to do, right? And then you have I can't remember what he followed with that with, but then you have like a string of comedies. Then Iron Man,
Hmm.
Mandalorian, The Jungle Book. I mean,
Lion King.
prolific, and he blends the genres, and you can see his What I love the most about it, and that's why I like that you brought up Steven Spielberg, is that you can always, and it was actually kind of the point I was gonna make, was that when a person shifts between those genres, I think the reason why, to kind of go to Seymour's point, why somebody will back them is because they always have their voice within it. Tell me if I'm wrong, but almost all Steven Spielberg's movies, it's always has kind of like it always ties up in a nice bow. It ends in like
Hmm.
it ends in a way that gives you like makes you
Closure.
feel like exactly it's like
Yeah.
all right blah. It's not like uh even Kubrick will end you on something that's just like, oh wait, what the hell,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, to point out, those creators have a say, in not in the sense that they, creative say, they have a say that they can bully the studio to say, hey, I am this person, I can do this. There's a
Mm.
lot of creators like Sam was talking about, like if I ever get a chance to have my book made into the movie, I'll fight to get some say. It depends, only because sometimes the studio is gonna bully the author and say, yeah, but we have the rights, so,
Yep.
and that's the end of the story, right?
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg,
Hmm.
you cannot say, go fuck yourself. But even he had troubles producing Lincoln, even though some people say it's, not true. But Martin Scorsese tried to get the silence done on his own. Like, not all, even though these creators have a big power, compared to small, indie publishers. It all depends, right? It depends like how much say you have in a big studio role, because uh, what's her name? The lady who did Fifty Shades of Grey. She surprisingly had a lot of say in the movie.
Stephanie.
Stephanie Myers? No,
Yeah,
Stephanie
right.
Myers was a Twilight. The
E.L.
Yeah.
whatever.
Gray.
You get the
Weren't
you
they the
get
same
you,
people? I could have sworn they
E.L.
were.
no,
Gray.
no.
Yeah,
So
great.
she had a more to say, right? So it depends on how much power you have as an individual. If you have a lots of power and say, hey, if Robert Downey Jr. shows up on set, no matter what the script says or if it's based on the book,
Whatever he's
because
saying.
because he's Robert Downey Jr., because he's Iron Man, he gets to rewrite the script, he gets to change the scene. But if he was fucking, I don't know, somebody else, then people will be like, "Who are you again?" Oh yeah, shut the fuck up and sit down. Let me do my job. It's true. Like, I'm not new to this. I've seen it happen a lot of time. Even Zack Snyder, right? They changed his movie fucking completely, which is why they had to
Yeah.
re-release his film again, right?
Four
It's
and a half
it's all
hours.
politics. It's all politics, which is why I have to end on say release the Seymour cut, what's that movie? The cats, the butthole cut.
Oh, the
Apparently,
butthole cut.
the
Yeah.
butthole cat. Release the butthole cat. Hashtag. Release the
And
butthole cat.
Adam's got a jet. Adam's got a jet. So
Yeah.
So once again,
no,
it all
it's
depends.
about to
It
end.
all depends.
So, final thoughts for everyone. Adam, where can people find you? Final
Oh, okay.
thoughts.
I always love being part of these groupcasts because we talk
Yeah.
about everything and anything under the sun. People can find me at CassidyChronicles.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I even lurk on Twitter occasionally. So, and
I'll find you. I'll find you on Twitter.
and the new book drops on Friday. So,
Catch that. Make
Congratulations.
Sure
Congratulations. Awesome. Fantastic. Great news.
Amazon.com, Adam Gaffen. Make sure to follow the author because you can do it on Amazon now, and you'll get little notifications every time you get a new drop. So make sure to do that. Leave a review. Don't be a dick.
And pick up the previous books.
Yes, that's the plan.
PL, what's up? Final thoughts, where can people find you?
A Drowned Kingdom out now. Last of the Atlanteans coming in spring 2022. Find me on Twitter. That's always the best place at PL Stuart Wright. You know how it rolls on Twitter for me, right? So DMs are always open. Business related, or if you have something else you want to talk to about. So hit me up there. Great meeting you guys. You guys are all fantastic. Can't wait to read your work. Again, mad because now my TBR list is that much longer, but that's a good thing. So thank you so much. I've been honored to be here.
Seymour.
Yeah, I saw this book. It's called Of Blood and Steel. You're welcome to pick it up on Amazon.
Yeah.
There's also audiobook available.
Wait, flash the cover a little bit more,
Oh, flash more the cover? Listen, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's the girl, here's the guy, and here's the baby. That's all you need to know. You can read the back of it. If you don't want to read it, that's fine.
You have me at Blood and Steel, man. That's all I needed.
Listen, people say
I'm done.
I
Sold.
don't care. If not for me, pick it up for the great people who worked on it. Not me, for the great artists who worked on it. Felix Oris and Sean King, who designed the title. So if you hate me, if you think I'm a full of shit, which might be true, at least pick up for the great people who got to work on the cover.
I always say, if you can't do it out of love for me, do it out of spite.
Do it out of spite,
Yeah.
Just buy it and
burn
it. I don't care.
All right, this will be the end of the podcast, AR's Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. As always, I am beyond honored to have everybody here. Thank you again for coming, and make sure to catch this episode on Friday when it releases. New episode on Monday for the author, and you already know, another Wednesday. Thanks again. This is the end of the podcast. Peace out.